Welcome to Archer Avenue. Archer Avenue is notorious among the Chicagoland area. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted roads in the United States. Archer is home to Resurrection Cemetery. One of the most famous stories in the Chicagoland area is that of Resurrection Mary. She's said to haunt Archer Avenue. Sometimes she hikes to Resurrection, and sometimes she hikes from Resurrection. I'm going to be sharing a couple encounters of Resurrection Mary, as written in various articles. But I can tell you I never saw her. I just heard stories growing up about how people would pick up a hitchhiker, and when they turned around to let her out, she would disappear. Resurrection Mary has been seen by more people than any other single ghost in the Chicagoland area. Typically, she has blonde hair and blue eyes, and there's been stories about Resurrection Mary since 1930. According to the legends, she had gone to a dance at the O. Henry Ballroom, which became the Willowbrook in the 1930s. She apparently got into an argument with her boyfriend and decided to hitchhike home. Somewhere between the ballroom and the main gates of Resurrection Cemetery, nearly 2 miles away, she was struck and killed by a hit-and-run motorist and left to die on the side of Archer Avenue. Within years, people began to see a girl in a long white dress with blonde hair looking for rides along the lonely stretch of Archer. One of the very first people to encounter her has this story to share. He had seen her on more than one occasion at the Willowbrook dance hall and had asked her to dance with him. They didn't talk much. They mainly just danced. And he noticed that she was ice cold to the touch. But despite that, she was beautiful, and there was something about her that he found very charming. As 11:30 approached, he decided it was time to leave and offered her a ride home. She gave him an address in the Bridgeport area of Chicago. But instead of going straight home, she insisted that they take Archer Road, as she called it. As they began to approach the main gates of Resurrection Cemetery, she asked him to pull over. She informed him that she had to cross the road and he couldn't go with her. That statement took him aback, but before he could respond, she darted across the street and then disappeared before she ever reached the gates. That's when he realized he had spent the evening dancing with a ghost. This actual story was covered in an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. That's how famous this stretch of Archer is. Another story is from a taxi driver several years later. He said there was a woman outside. It was probably a Thursday night. I had taken somebody to Palos Heights or Palos Hills. I was lost. I didn't know where I was. I was trying to make my way back to the tollway. I'd just turned on Archer, down where there's still a lonely stretch of road near Willow Springs Road. And there she was, just standing there with no coat by the entrance to this little shopping center. No coat, and it was winter. She didn't hail or put her thumb out or anything. She just looked at my cab, so of course I stopped. I figured maybe she needed help. She hopped right in the front seat, and she had on this fancy white dress like she'd just been to a wedding. She was beautiful, a blonde, young, probably 21. I asked her where she was going, and she just said she had to get home. I asked her what was wrong, if she'd had car trouble, but she didn't really seem to understand, and she didn't answer me. She seemed off, sort of fuzzy, like she'd had a couple drinks. The only thing she did say was, "The snow came early this year." Other than that, she just nodded when I asked her questions, and I said, "Are we supposed to keep going on Archer?" She was just looking out the window at the snow and trees, and she seemed a million miles away. She just nodded. A couple miles up Archer, she suddenly jumped up and said, "Here, here," so I hit the brakes. I looked around and I didn't see any kind of house, so I said, "Where?" And she sticks out her arm and points across the road to my left and says, "There." So I looked to my left at this little shack, and when I turned around, she was gone, vanished. That door never opened. I swear to you, it never opened. Later in 1978, a young couple insists that they drove through Mary on Archer Avenue, that the wife yelled at her husband that he was about to hit someone, and they drove through what they thought was a young woman, but she disintegrated and just faded away. Legend has it that there's marks on the gates at Resurrection Cemetery. Marks that look like they were made by human hands, but they're black, as though they'd been scorched into the mesh wire. Those gates had been replaced several times over, but legend has it that the hand marks repeatedly reappear. The Willowbrook burned to the ground 2 years ago. All that's left is a pile of rubble. But they left the sign, hopefully to commemorate all of the legend that goes along with that location. Across from the Willowbrook, you'll see the Irish Legend. The Irish Legend is a former speakeasy. The building has been there since 1915. Rumors of deaths and Chicago gangster affiliations plague the Irish Legend. It's been named several things over the years, but is well known to be one of the haunted rest stops on Archer Avenue. It's a very quaint, tiny little bar restaurant, and I think all of the wood is original. It's beautiful inside. It's notorious for being affiliated with the Chicago gangsters, and several deaths have occurred on the property, including a bartender and a woman who fell in love with him. This stretch of Archer, while there are no one story that makes it haunted, unfortunately has claimed what could be hundreds of lives. In 2016 alone, 4 people were killed on this stretch in car accidents. It's dark at night. There are no streetlights. It's a very windy, curvy road, and the speed limit is 55. There's been a lot of deaths on this road because of how dangerous it is. I myself have driven this road many times, and it's terrifying, especially when it's snowy or rainy. Visibility is almost nothing. I shudder to think how many people have died here. I see the markings on the side of the road, and that's probably just a small fraction of the amount of people that have lost their lives on this stretch of road. The reason I'm taking you down here is because we are going to end up at a place called St. James Sag Cemetery. You might not be familiar with this place, as it's nowhere near as famous as Resurrection Cemetery. But nonetheless, it's much, much older. St. James is a cemetery that dates back to at least 1833. It was originally a mission and the site of a French signal post as early as the 1600s. It's also said that in the hilly area, many Native Americans used that area as a burial ground. The present St. James Parish is actually a Catholic church, but that's not why it's famous. People around Chicago know St. James as Monk's Castle. And the reason it has that nickname is because there's a legend that goes along with what looks like a castle on the property. It's probably an old rectory or maybe even the original church, but it's stone and it's very old. You'll see it later on in the video. The story goes like this. The first reported ghost story was in September of 1897. And it was reported to the Chicago Tribune. 2 musicians were performing on the grounds, and after finishing around 1 a.m., they decided to stay overnight rather than attempting their long journey back to the city. About an hour later, they were awoken by the sound of hooves on a gravel road. They looked out the window and saw a carriage. It came up to the road entranceway and stopped and turned around. He saw what appeared to be a girl in a white robe just appear out of nowhere. She got into the coach with the driver, and they turned around again, and as they passed the archway, the driver and everything vanished. It's been said that if unwanted visitors are caught trespassing at Monk's castle, the monks will apprehend them and force them to kneel down on ball bearings all night in prayer. Now, there were never any monks stationed here. It's just another of several folk legends which have attached itself to St. James. Other versions of this story tell of a mad monk who chased children from the cemetery, shouting and blazing his light. It was most likely a reverend who was the basis for that story, but I myself have heard stories about how the hills move at Monk's Castle, and tales of monks gliding up and down the hills, never making a sound. I hope you enjoyed this little tour of Archer Avenue. In the time that I lived there, I've had one experience, but that's another story for another time. I hope you enjoyed it. Sweet dreams.